Well, hello and welcome to the Pastor's Study. You know, we're coming up on Mother's Day. It's right around the corner. And I want to speak to that subject for just a little bit. You know, there are times and there are women, and you may be one of them, that thinks, my life is not all that together, and I don't know that God can use me. There's some things in my life, or maybe you are a person born out of arrangements of sin and heartache. Your growing up years weren't so good, and you're thinking, God will never use me. Well, I want to go back to the passage in Matthew chapter 1, and I'm just going to look at three individuals in this passage here. These women are mentioned, specifically mentioned, in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. And I want you to think about it. First we have, it says in verse 3, it says, Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Now, that might not seem significant, but when you know that Tamar had an illicit relationship with Judah, he was her father-in-law, and she had been married to one of his sons and then another son, and they both died and they had no children. And so it had been that she was supposed to wait until another son came along, and it became evident in time that that wasn't going to happen. And so she played the harlot. She played the part and went out and was intimate with Judah and what became pregnant. And the child out of that union was part of the lineage of Christ. And then you go down a little bit further, and in verse 5, it says, Solomon was the father of Boaz by Rahab. There's another woman that we encounter. Rahab, you may remember, was a prostitute, and she was rescued when the Israelites came and invaded the land of Canaan because she wanted to follow God. And God puts her into the lineage. And then you go on and it says, Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth. And who was Ruth? She was a non-Israelite. She had been married to Naomi's one son. He died, and she came back with Naomi, and then Boaz found her and married her. These women were all part of the lineage of Christ. And then you get to the last one, and I said 3, and I should have said 4, but the last one was Bathsheba. And she had an adulterous affair with King David. The first son was died, and yet Solomon is born out of that union. And I just want us to think about, God used these women and used the children out of their marriages after these women had been involved. At least 3 of them had been involved in sinful acts. Can't really talk about Ruth being involved in a sinful act, but she was not an Israelite. And God used all of these women for His honor and His glory. And when we confess our sins, He can use us as well. A woman, no matter what your past, whether there's sin involved, whether there was children born, He can use you, and He can use your children. God can clean and restore a life. Think about it and celebrate motherhood and God's value in women. Until next time, goodbye, and may God bless.